Welcome to Connection. I'm Pastor Phil Emerson. Thank you for tuning in and making Connection a part of your regular weekly schedule. I want to share with you before we begin that Connection can now be seen on Fridays, and I hope you'll check your ECAC cable guide to find us, and if you miss us on Wednesday night, join with us on Friday, won't you? I know all of you have come to appreciate Jerry Scott, his insightful and stimulating devotions and his challenging message of the gospel of Jesus Christ as he tries to help us make the connection in our life between God and our everyday living. Here's Jerry now to share with us a story or two, and I hope you'll stay tuned and join with us for the conversation that follows. Jerry?
Thank you, Phil. Stories are very, very important to the understanding of Christ's message for us, to the understanding of what it means to be a Christian person today. As a matter of fact, stories are so important that Jesus used them almost exclusively in his teachings. It says in the Bible that he spoke in parables. In fact, he only spoke to his audience and his congregation and his disciples and so on in parables. I'm going to share a couple of stories with you today that are interesting to me. They're not parables in the Bible, but they are parallels of parables. And each one of these stories, I think, holds a very important message for us as we try to live as a Christian person. And I'm going to tell them, Phil, and I thought what we'd do is I'll tell a story, and you and I'll talk about it and see if we can discover what these stories are really trying to tell us about how to live our lives, okay?
Okay.
Get ready. Here comes the first one. The first one's about a person who's walking through the woods, and he's kind of camping, I guess. And it comes nighttime, and he falls asleep, and it's kind of a beautiful setting. He has his dream. And as he's dreaming, the dream says to him that when he wakes up in the morning, he can go to the outskirts of the woods, and there he will find a holy man sitting under a tree praying and meditating. And he can go up to this holy man, and this holy man will give him a diamond of immense value. A diamond that once he owns it, it'll solve all of his financial problems. He'll never have to think about money ever again. He'll be able to buy anything that his heart desires. So the guy wakes up from his dream, and he kind of tidies up his campsite or whatever they do. And all of a sudden, he remembers this dream. And he said, I wonder if this could be true. So he gets up, and he walks to the outskirts of the woods, and he walks around, and he doesn't find this fellow for the longest time. Then all of a sudden he sees this tree, and sure enough, underneath this tree is this little holy man. He's sitting there, and he's kind of praying, and the guy walks up to him, and he doesn't want to disturb his prayer, so he just kind of stands there for a while. And the holy man finally finishes, and he says amen, and he looks up, and the guy says to him, well, he said, I had a dream about you. He said, you might think this is silly, but I had this dream about you, and that you had this diamond that you would give me that would make me rich, and I wouldn't have to worry about money and everything. The holy man says, diamond? Well, he looks, and he's got this little bag, by his side by the tree, and he shakes it out, and a crust of bread falls out, and a book or two, and on top of all this stuff falls out this diamond that's about the size of an orange. It is huge. It is probably the largest diamond in the world. And the holy man says, do you mean this thing here? The guy says, yeah, that. Well, he says, this is what you want? The guy says, yeah. Well, he says, here, take it. The guy says, well, just like that? Holy man says, sure, take it. So the guy takes it. He says, thank you very much. And he goes back to his campsite, and he's polishing his diamond on the side of his coat and looking at it and thinking about the boats and the house and the clothes and the new car. And, oh, this is just going to be one of the stuff. I'm going to be wealthy and famous and everything. He goes to sleep the next night with all these things in his mind. Can't sleep a wink. Tosses. He turns. He's restless. He can't sleep. He wakes up the next morning, puts the diamond in his pocket, and walks back to the holy man. The holy man is in prayer, and he waits, and the holy man looks up, and he says, what do you want? The holy man says, well, the guy says, this diamond, he says, I really don't want this diamond. And he says, here, take this diamond back. I don't want it. Well, the holy man says, well, what do you want? And the man says, I want whatever it is that you have that enabled you to give that diamond to me so easily. That's what I want. I love that story.
And rightfully so. That is a powerful story.
What does that story, Phil, tell us about, well, what does it tell us about human nature? These are big questions here. What does it tell us about the nature of God? What message does it have for me and you?
Let's start by exploring human nature and that tension that the story reveals between what we always think our desires are and what our true desires really are. And it's hard for us sometimes to explore that. I think we all imagine, as I don't know about you, but I certainly, as Jerry talked about the diamond and about unlimited wealth, you know, imagine what that life must be like. To be able to buy anything, to never have to ask how much anything costs. Don't you fantasize about that, just with that young man?
Oh, I'd just like to try it for a few minutes, I guess, just to see what it feels like.
Absolutely. Right? We all, and we need to be honest with ourselves about that. I think there is that sense in which we all would like to attempt to build security out of the things that we possess. Mm-hmm. And we're trained from the beginning of our life, aren't we?
Yes, we are. This is what the world teaches us.
It teaches us to take care of ourselves, to take care of our own, to acquire, and those who acquire the most, they're the most successful. It's interesting how the young man pondered, however, the second part of the story, which is he got it, he had it, but he suddenly realized in possessing it that was really very little. That the real gift, the real diamond, was in the holy man's ability to give it away.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that how we master possessions? Is that how we know we're free of them? When we can give them away?
I think so. I think so. You know, you think too about people. I think about my life and about the constant striving, you know, for more stuff, for more, you know, whatever, and what a waste it would be if it is indeed really true that when you get to the end and you have the diamond, if you say to yourself, is this what I've been working for? You know, this is not what I thought it was.
In fact, all through life, we read in magazines every day, we read in the newspaper every day, those tremendous stories of success that only turned out to be stories of failure. Mm-hmm. Because they had it all. Len Bias had it all. But for some unknown reason, it wasn't enough. Everything wasn't enough. And there is a lesson in that. But I want to lead us into taking a look at the story to let it reflect on, as Jerry invited us, our relationship to God. If it is true that we really possess things when we are able to give them away, that our true mastery of things is the ability to give it away. What does this mean theologically? To wrestle just some quick theological strokes here. And what does it show us about God, for example? Did not God show his real godliness in giving himself away to us on the cross in Jesus Christ? Does not Christ show his complete mastery of life by being willing to give himself away and not fight back and not become a king, you know, and not take up the sword? That is, the power came in their emptying themselves out. God's emptying himself out in Christ, Christ emptying himself out for us. And I think I understand, though I will not claim I live completely, this notion that I, as Phil Emerson, will have mastery of my life when I am willing to empty myself out for others. And boy, now we've plowed the circle around, haven't we?
We really have.
Because the wrestling there, the struggle there is I always, myself says, no, protect, guard, defend. And the more I do that, the less I possess of myself. But the more I let go to that side of me that says, turn the other cheek, walk the extra mile, give yourself away. Don't worry if people are putting your name up in lights. Don't worry if everybody speaks well of you. Don't worry if you're on TV. Just give yourself away in the quiet caring that Christ, that emptying oneself out. Now that's real power, and the young man in your story recognized that, didn't he? He came to that knowledge when he held the fortune in his hand and said, the real fortune is in the life of this.
He said, how could this fella give this to me?
Yeah.
How could this guy give this away?
What do you think as you listen to Connection? Where are you in the story? Did you get caught up in the fantasy about wealth and power? Were you stunned that the young man went back, or were you kind of expecting that being a religious program that we would have that kind of moral? But it's not just a moral story. It is really a profound story that forces us to wrestle with who we are. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story.
You got another one?
Oh yeah, I want just one more little capper, one little capper on that for me. Making money and so on. It has its difficulties, but I mean, most all of us, we make a little bit of money here and there. But I'm coming slowly to begin to understand that the true measure of a person is not how much he can get. Not how much he can get. The true measure of a person is how much he can give. Huh?
Absolutely.
Not only money, but himself and so on. Giving is the person that can give and give everything has found the diamond, has found the secret. Huh?
And truly we name them saints. And truly we recognize them as special. You think of Sister Teresa, for example. Mother Teresa is a clear, living example of giving oneself away. But you want to have power over yourself and power over your life, then give yourself away.
Yeah.
Wow, I mean it just boggles our mind to begin to understand. You want to have no power over your life, then just keep trying to build the power and keep it in your hand.
What a paradox! What a paradox! Really.
Yeah.
What a puzzle.
What a puzzle. But it's God's way. That's why God rides the lame horse and carves on rotten wood, because God shows us the power in weakness, the power in what we view as weakness.
Want to hear another one?
Oh, I sure do.
Okay.
If it's anything like the first one.
Oh, I like this one too. This is a little shorter, and it's really interesting. We hear sermons about, and I explore in my Sunday school class lessons about letting God take care of you. God says He will take care of you. Now that doesn't mean that you can just lay back and do nothing. I mean, you're His arms and His legs and so on. But God will provide for us, and He will take care of us. I mean, He promises that to us, and that's kind of what this story is about. Okay. All right. There are these two monks, I guess, religious folks that have just sort of immersed themselves in their whole life in the religious search. They're walking along, and even though they're brothers in the faith, they are absolutely opposite in the kinds of things they believe. The one person believes in the spirituality of acquisition, of getting things for himself. The other person believes in the spirituality of relinquishment, of giving everything away that we've just been talking about. So one is like this, and the other is like that. And they're talking about the pros and cons of each of the belief, of each belief. And they come to this river, and it's nighttime, and the monk that practices relinquishment says, well, it's kind of late, and we're just going to have to stay here on this side of the river because there's no one else coming along that will pay our way across. And since I have no money, we'll just make our bed under this tree, and we'll spend the night under the stars. And the other monk who practices acquisition things. Now I'm going to make my point, with this fellow. He says, wait, he says, let me tell you something. He says, we lay here under this tree and sleep on the ground. There's going to be bugs that'll crawl in our ears and tigers that may bite us and snakes. And it'd be horrible. We might even die laying here. He said, we have to get across. And the other monk says, I have no money. The other monk says, well, I have the money. Read my lips. I have the money to pay the boatman to get us across. Now, do you see what I've been talking about? So the boatman comes, and they jump on the boat, and the one guy pays the fare, and they get across to the other side. And the one monk who practices acquisition, who paid the fare, said, "Now, are you beginning to see what I've been talking about? Here we were over there. On the one side of the river, it was night, the bugs were going to eat us. I had the money, and now I paid the way, so now you can see the benefits of the spirituality of acquisition." The other monk kind of looks puzzled, and he says, well, I'm not really sure I see that at all. He says, when I was on the other side, I had no money. And your pockets were full, and your pockets became my pockets, so you actually practiced relinquishment. And here I am on the other side of the river. I had no money to begin with. I have no money now. But here I am on the other side. He says, I observe God always provides for me. I love that story.
Oh. Now you've gone from preaching to meddling, Jerry, with that one.
How do I meddle?
Oh, that is such a difficult story, and it has so many levels. Let's begin with a simple one. Let me recast your story.
Okay.
And see if it's the same story, if it's different. And that I a lot of times meet Christians who thrust themselves out in life without any preparation, without any planning, without any mobilization of their resources. And I know Jerry said this. You expect me to.
Wait, now you're meddling.
Yeah. but I met these young people once who were in a car with bald tires and no gas. They were out in the middle of Indiana in a rural country. They happened to stop by our church. Just one, they needed something to eat, and second, they needed money for gas. And when I asked them what they were doing out there, they told me that God had called them to go to Kentucky. And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, did God tell you how to provide?" And he said, "Well, God said He would take care of us if we would go." Now, that may be a little like the story and may not be.
Yes, okay.
But I have problems. I really wrestle with this story. Does God not expect us to do things that He knows we can do for ourselves? What do you think as you're listening in? God doesn't comb my hair in the morning. He expects me to do that. God doesn't tie my shoes. He expects me to do that. God doesn't brush my teeth. He expects me to do that. God expects me to love my sons, to love my wife. Is there any point in that, Jerry? Do you think there's some truth in that or not? Now, I'm not tricking you. I'm not leading you down a clever path.
No.
But is there some truth in that?
I struggle with this.
I know you do.
I'm back now to your guys from Kentucky. Did you help them?
Yes.
So in a way, then one could make.
But with an angry spirit.
But one could make the argument that by George they were right.
Yes,
God
you're a monk of relinquishment. That's right. Yeah. But we took resources. You see. We took resources that may have been, in this case, not, but could have been designated to some place that we also felt God was wanting us to do.
Yes.
But I suppose then you would tell me that, remember my faith, that God's unlimited.
Well, I would come back and I would say, consider the lilies. They don't toil, neither do they spin, and yet God takes care of them.
Is our wanting to do these things for ourselves, the sin of acquisition. That's really at the heart of this, isn't it? Do we want to take charge of our life to be in control, to be sinfully in control? Or do we want to, take charge of our life because God tells us that there's certain parts of our life that we should manage?
I think that God is saying, there's certain things I want you to think about, and there's other things that I want you to let me think about, You're not God, There's certain things that I do, and there's certain things that you do. And you just let me handle the important things, and you just kind of do the rest, I guess.
You see, I see there's sin in both those monks. And I think I see this not out of defense, but I see the sin in both monks. One monk who in my point of view is irresponsible, and who is using a theology never to have to face up. Now, I may be being hard on him.
I think you're being hard.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'll listen to you.
but there is some possibility for sin there. At least I would raise up the possibility, because I see Christians, for example, who walk into the kitchen and ask God to tell them what to fix for lunch. I think that's irresponsible. But I certainly see the sin of the monk of acquisition, who is using his acquisition not to help here, but to just to validate his possession.
So I should really tell the story over with a third monk in the middle there.
Well, it's your story, Jared. but no, I guess I want to say that if I can agree, I can certainly agree that the monk of acquisition ought to be criticized. Just like I think many of us white middle-class folk who have good life, who dabble with our charity, who dabble with our Christian life, who dabble just enough to ease my worry about, my life. I think we too should be judged harshly in this. And it's not, and we're not saved by the idea, just like the monk of acquisition is not saved by the fact that he can now say, well, gee, I helped this other monk. Why are you mad at me? Look what I did. Don't be mad at me. Look, I gave, I've been giving $15 a week to the church. There's, you see, I'm trying.
It's a puzzle. It is.
No, well, it's a puzzle for me. So help me.
So I'm supposed to, all right, I'll help you with another story. And this is not the next one. This is one I just happened to think of as I was listening to you talk. This is a joke.
Okay.
Now, I know that we had the lottery thing here, and we all, tried to do away with the lottery. And so this is a joke about the lottery, all right?
Okay.
There's this fellow who was praying to God.
Yeah.
He was poor. And he said, God, please. He said, I've lived in poverty all my life. I've tried to obey you and so on. And I don't have very many years left to live. And would you just let me see what it feels like to be on the other side of the fence, just for a couple of years? I mean, I'd like to have some money, okay? Please, God, please. And he said, anything. He says, I'll do anything you want. He said, I have an idea. Be easy. Just let me win the lottery. Okay? So that's his prayer. So he prays and he prays and he prays and he prays. And 3 years later, he's poorer than he was when he started out, and this time he is mad at God, and he shakes his fist at God, and he says, I prayed to win the lottery, and here I am, I'm just as poor. He says, would you just give me a break? And he hears this voice coming from heaven, and God says, just buy a ticket. Right? We got to do something.
Now you're preaching my tune. Okay. I like that story. Okay. But I must always in life, and our directors are telling us we've got to bring this down to the ground.
I have 6 more stories.
Well, we'll do it on another show. Okay. We must, I think, be willing to realize the tension that comes between radical abandonment of our life and our possessions to God, and this sense of wanting to be responsible, and God wanting us to be responsible. And I find that's a tension in life, Jerry. I find that's a tension. And furthermore, I find that I sometimes fall off the table one end or the other. And God is constantly drawing me back and saying, no, here. What do you think as you listen tonight? Do you find that to be a tension in your life? I believe that Jesus Christ has given us the guidance that we need to remind us that life is an adventure. Life is life. It must be lived to be appreciated. And maybe we've touched on a hurt for you with these two stories, or maybe we've got you dialoguing with your family, with your spouse tonight. But hopefully we've got no big arguments going.
You might want to remember these stories, and over dinner or with a friend, share one of these stories with them and see what they have to say. There's a lot of depth and insight that can be gained by thinking about the principles that these stories try to touch on, huh?
And they're powerful ones, and if we can just comprehend them, I think we've come close to comprehending more about God and God in our life. Thank you for joining us for Connection. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and I hope you'll stay tuned for next week's Connection, and join us again, because we have another most challenging and interesting program. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Phil. Good night.